Hey guys, Adam here with Tech Secrets Revealed, and today we're going to show you how to replace the screen on an Ultrabook. We're going to be working today on a Dell L321X. It's a little 13-inch skinny little Ultrabook. It has a problem with white pressure marks on the LCD. These are not the same as dead pixels, so any of those little videos you see on YouTube that, play epileptic seizures for 3 hours claiming to, fix dead or stuck pixels are not going to work with this. It's not the pixels that have a problem. It's one of the layers behind the LCD. Usually what ends up happening is it's from physical damage. It probably can be fixed, but it's not worth the aggravation. With a standard laptop, you can take the screen itself out of the bezel and everything else. With these Ultrabooks, in order to save space and make them as skinny as possible, it's fused together in one solid piece, so it's just really not worth the aggravation. The process I'm going to show you is a little involved because it's an Ultrabook, so they sandwich everything under other things and make it a pain in the ass to get into. But all in all, the process should be the same on a normal laptop. So without further ado, let's go have some fun. Okay, so here it is. The first thing we're going to do is, with these Ultrabooks, obviously with a laptop, you would have screws all over the place, but with these Ultrabooks, they try to make them as, sleek as possible. Let me just move this over a little bit. So in this thing, we have 10 screws under here, and they are not Phillips head. They tried to be slick. They are, it's like a little mini Torx driver. I'm not going to show it here because, frankly, I don't feel like getting sued, although at this point I'm sure I have plenty of cease and desist letters that just haven't gotten here because, COVID has slowed down the Postal Service. But without showing the brand, pretty sure anybody that's shopped at any local, super centers will recognize the color thing here. You can pick this up at that blue store that does rollback pricing for I think it was 10-12 bucks. This thing has to have, these little things have 6 each in there. I think it's got 42 attachments in it, and it's got plenty of different sizes of Torx drivers and everything else. So to be perfectly honest with you, I would strongly suggest picking it up. I don't even know why I put this thing away anymore, to be perfectly honest. I use it at least once a day. So first thing we're going to do is get all these out, these little Torx screws. Especially when it comes to Torx screws, take your time and do not wrench down on them because they're very easy to strip and they are not easy to get out once they are stripped. It's not like a flathead screw or a Phillips head screw where there are little tricks to get them out. These are a pain in the ass to get out. And as you can see, I dropped one on the hinge because I'm a wonderful person. Okay, there we go. Really the only way to get these out once you strip them is to try to get a little mini flathead and kind of hit it at an angle. I could comment on that, but then this video probably wouldn't get approved. Yeah, so Torx screws are a pain in the ass when they're stripped, so take your time. That was the point of that. On that note, since I got 3 left, I want to tell you people, it really is extremely difficult for me to watch my mouth and not make sexual innuendos during these videos, so I should get at least a gift basket or something delivered just for the effort I put into that. Okay, so all the screws are out. Now, like I've mentioned in another video, guitar picks, man's best friend when it comes to, prying cases apart and stuff for computers. Around the edge here, let's see what the best place would be to take this off. Right about here. This is already kind of loose because I popped it open 3 times fixing this, but you're just going to want to kind of run it across the case and it'll kind of pop itself open. Okay, next step. Before you touch anything, especially on an Ultrabook, right there is, let's see if I can zoom in. Right there is where this giant battery pack connects to the motherboard. Take that, and usually if you pull gently, you can just pull at it. Disconnect it. Disconnect it. Okay? And from previous videos, now that it's disconnected, let's zoom back out. What we're going to do not zoom in, zoom back out. I guess this is why I don't work for any news channels, because I can't even figure out how the camera works. We're going to hold down the power button for 20 seconds to discharge any, built up residual electrical current, anything like that. Especially for a project that's this involved, the last thing you want to do is go through all this just to find out that you shorted it out before you even started. This would be like when my mom was in nursing school and she failed her final exam because she didn't wash her hands before she touched the patient, and the instructor I guess was trying to teach her a lesson and didn't tell her that until afterwards and said, "Oh, well, you failed 30 seconds in, I just thought it would be more fun this way." So the first thing we're going to do is take out the screws for the battery pack. That is the first thing you want to get out of here. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, let's see, 5, 8 it looks like. Now the way that they constructed this is kind of irritating, because if you look here, there is a little ribbon cable thingy here. And if you pay attention, it actually is on top of the battery. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you even do anything is pop open that little connector right there. Since I already have a screwdriver in my hand, I'll just do it gently. If it wants to cooperate, there we go. And pull it out. Okay. Now I'm going to zoom out, and you guys can go get some Cheetos or a drink or whatever while I'm taking out these annoying screws. It also might not be a bad idea. I don't need to because I've opened this specific machine 4 times now. But it might not be a bad idea to take a picture of where everything's located, especially if you have different size screws and different, length screws and everything. So you can put everything back exactly the way it was. The other day, actually, I wish I had done this when I worked on this laptop. There was a Toshiba laptop, and the touchpad was kind of pushed up, and I couldn't figure out why. Turns out that I put one of the screws back in the wrong place, and it was a little long, so it was pushing the underside of the touchpad from underneath and forcing it out of the laptop, basically. As soon as I changed that screw, problem solved. If I had taken the time to take a picture way back, then I wouldn't have had that issue. Let's see, I got 2 more over here. I loosen that one. Okay, I think we're good to go. So, gently get this ribbon cable out of the way and pull this up. Now this entire thing is the battery, and it's going to look pretty much the same on any Ultrabook. It might be a slightly different shape, but this giant black block is the battery. Get that out of the way, get it far away from what you're doing. Okay, now before we disconnect the screen, let's zoom in a little bit, just a little bit. Okay. This white and black wire that you see, I'm going to trace it with the screwdriver. It runs down here, goes all the way across here, and connects over here is the Wi-Fi wire that goes to the antenna. The antenna on these Ultrabooks is usually somewhere in the bezel on top of the screen. So, like I've shown you in another video, be very gentle and, let's see, move this over a little bit, pop the clips off of the Wi-Fi card. You do not need to actually remove the Wi-Fi card with this specific project. You just have to disconnect the wires from it. Okay, they're both off. Now, pull this out of the way and take care to make sure that you pay attention to exactly where it's routed, because otherwise when you put things back together you're going to get annoyed, things won't fit, and that's more than likely why. Also, there may be a ribbon cable or 2 in the way there is in this one. Depends on the Ultrabook or laptop and how it's constructed. So this one, just pop this open, take this out. This happens to connect the touchpad to the motherboard. It's not really a big deal. So now pull this wire, get it out from all these little channels that they have it wedged in. Okay, so now that's loose. Well, almost. Okay, now that's loose. Now the second thing you want to disconnect is this right here. This is, let's see if I can get you over here. You know what? moving this would be easier. There we go. This is the video cable. Okay, this is very important. And this little black plastic thing up here, you can pull on this to get it off. This is what it's there for, to make life easier for you. So grab onto that, pop it off, done. Now, this next part's important, especially for people that have a heavy hand when they work on things like I do. The hinges that are held in are usually held in by either 2 or 3 hinges, or 2 or 3 screws per hinge. Okay. What you're going to do is be very careful with these. If you strip the holes that these go into, you're screwed. The screen will basically always be flopping around, and basically, I mean, you can glue it back together, this, that, the other thing, but it will never be as strong as it was before you stripped it. So, take all these out. And I don't know if you're zoomed in enough to notice, but there's one screw over here that has a bigger head than the rest of them. Haha, yeah. And why is that? Because I stripped the hole where it goes, the thing I just told you not to do. Just so happens I got lucky enough to have a screw that was fat enough to stay stuck in there, but, you know, can't always get lucky. Okay, now. I think that's pretty much disconnected, so separate it from, might have to bend the hinges a little bit just to get it out. And now the screen is completely disconnected from here. Get that out of the way. Okay, so, sorry, just cleaning out some metal fragments that are in here. There we go. Okay, so now we have this. And let's get out of the envelope. The one I bought from who's hopefully a reputable seller on eBay. I guess we'll find out in about 10 minutes. Same exact thing. Same screen, same everything. So, what we're going to do here is, before you do this, you're going to have to pry the hinges up just a little bit. You don't want them up like super high or anything, but you don't want them flat down either, otherwise you can't get the you know, rest of the machine in there. So, now we figured that out. Slide it back under here the way the other one was, and kind of just pop this in there. There you go. Okay, now the hinges. Now that they're here, you can push them down flat until they make contact with the you know, area that they're supposed to be screwed into. Tell you the truth, if they're really stiff like that, that's a really good sign, because that, you know, means you're not going to have any issues with any floppy screens or any other fun stuff. So now you're going to want to put the 4 screws, or 6 depending on the, you know, machine, back in here. Now, just like I said from removing them, tighten them to the point where they, you know, fight you a little bit, but do not over tighten them. If you over tighten them, you have a big problem. Trust me, I've tried to fix this on other machines. I just had this problem with an XPS laptop to the point where I was using a power drill, all kinds of stuff. It's just not going to work. So tighten this just enough. I'm going to put this one over here. Okay. And last one. You know, the fat one that I stripped, where I did exactly what I told you not to do, because I'm a genius. Which is why this one has to be forced in, because it's not supposed to be in here. Okay. Now you can reconnect the video cable. Line it up nice and easy. Don't force it. If you have to force it, it's not lined up correctly, because it should just pop in. There, that's snapped in. And now you're going to want to, hopefully, I mean, if you need it, great. If you don't, great. But you're going to take the Wi-Fi wires for the, you know, adapter, and you're going to route them right where they were again. You can use the little, you know, guitar pick thing to wedge it in some of these things, because it's really annoying. I don't know if you just heard the pitter-patter of little feet, but from one of my previous videos, the person who poured alcohol all over a keyboard, which was part of the reason why I made that video, just came in to get something out of the fridge. So, guess I'll let her know that, you know, she's part of an instructional video. In her defense, though, she was helping me clean it, and I didn't tell her not to pour the whole bottle, and she didn't tell her not to pour the whole bottle. So she poured the whole bottle. And then we put everything back together. Everything seemed great until she went to type and nothing happened. And that turned into like a month-and-a-half long fiasco of hunting down every buy and sell site to try to find her a laptop that wasn't awful. But, you know what? It's fun. So. One thing I didn't mention, but I have in previous videos, I guess I just overlooked it with this one. Make note when you disconnect the Wi-Fi cables of which was on the left and which was on the right, the black and white, because you're obviously going to have to, you know, reconnect it in the same way. If for some reason you put this back together and you don't have a Wi-Fi signal, or your Wi-Fi signal is not working the right way, chances are you probably just reverse the wires. It's really not a big deal, so just take it apart and switch them and put it back together. Now we're going to gently put this under that ribbon cable that was in our way before, if you remember. Tuck it under this little stupid thing that's in the way right here. And some manufacturers, I can't believe Dell actually had a brain here, but if you notice, they made the black wire longer than the white wire, so basically it's impossible for me to plug the white wire into that. So it's kind of idiot-proof as to which goes where. I guess that's what happens when you have a bunch of emails about people complaining about something really stupid. Like I said in a previous video, just line it up, make sure it's nice and centered, and just give it a little bit of force. It doesn't take much. There, got the white one on, and then we're going to put the black one back over here. Eventually we will put the black one back on over here. Maybe that'll be like a second part to this video where I get the Wi-Fi cable back on. Or maybe we'll put this on the blooper reel and title it, you know, Idiot Can't Get Cable Back On, Part 2. Feel free to skip ahead if you'd like, because this is kind of ridiculous. Or could it be that it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't even see at this point? Oh my god, really? It's always got to be something stupid, too. There we go. Okay. Finally, stubborn bastard. Okay, now that's in. So, if you remember, this ribbon cable was under the battery and this one was over the battery. So, go ahead, flip this up, stick this ribbon cable back in, make sure it's nice and centered, and flip this back down. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to put the battery back in and screw it back into the case, but we are not going to plug it back in yet. Very important to leave it unplugged. Okay, so it's back in, and let me get all the little obnoxious screws to put it back in with. Well, I guess if nothing else, with this whole, you know, COVID quarantine, the whole world is shut down thing, maybe some of you have, you know, learned to fix your own stuff and electronics and stuff. So at least something good came out of it. I found the time to make these little videos, so, you know. And again, I don't even know why I need to mention this, but be careful with any of these screws. Like I said, the correct amount of tightness, there is not like an actual like science behind this, but basically it's, you know, tighten it until it fights you a very little bit, and that's good enough. There's no reason to have to wrench down any of this stuff. We're not building, you know, tanks here. We're putting laptops back together, so. Although, I guess on that note, if somebody had actually put the rivets on the Titanic down harder, maybe it wouldn't be at the bottom of the ocean right now. So, use it to your own discretion. The one thing that I am going to mention, I you know, told you not to put the battery back in yet. Yes, that's true, but make sure you put the battery back in, or plug the battery back in before you put the case back on, because it's really easy to lose track of what you're doing and become more focused on more important things like, you know, the Wi-Fi adapter, the hinges, the ribbon cables, blah blah blah. And after you put it together, you get all excited and anxious because you want to see if it worked. Yeah, I just did that the other day, and I don't know why I'm telling you these things, because you probably will think, well, why the hell am I listening to him then? But I turned it back on, it didn't turn on, and then it dawned on me, wait, I never plugged the battery back in, did I? Genius. Okay, so now that that's all put back together, the reason that I told you not to plug the battery back in yet is because if you remember, we still have this loose ribbon cable. The last thing you want is a power supply plugged in, and then you go insert a cable. It's probably not going to be a problem, but probably not and definitely not are two different things. So, especially with stuff like this, better safe than sorry. So we'll put in the ribbon cable and snap it back down. Now you can plug the battery back in, but do not power it on. Not yet, anyway. Make sure it's nice and snug. And now we're going to put the case back on. These cases around the edges, depending on the manufacturer, might snap in a little bit, but they shouldn't fight you at all. If they fight you, don't force it, take it back off and give it a good look. An example, while I'm putting these screws back in, I have an Asus G7 4SX gaming laptop, and I was fixing something on it. I put it back together, and out of nowhere it refused to turn on. Didn't have power. There was no reason that I could think of why it shouldn't have power. I took it back apart, everything was fine, and what ended up happening was one of the Wi-Fi cables, the white one, was right up against one of the screws that held the bottom chassis to the motherboard. And because I wasn't careful enough and was like rushing to put it back together, what ended up happening was when I screwed it back together, I basically stripped some of the insulation off the side of the wire, and I was causing it to have a grounding issue because basically the metal screw was connecting to the metal hole on the motherboard, touching the metal Wi-Fi cable. I took it apart, cut the Wi-Fi cable, resoldered it together, you know, put heat shrink on it, and once I was done with all that, it powered right back on with one button press, and that was that. But point being, if I had actually paid attention, that wouldn't have happened. So, and I did feel the chassis fighting me a little bit, and I should have known better, but to be perfectly honest, it was late at night and I just wanted it over with. So we got 3 screws left, and then we get to turn on the laptop and see what happens. Or, I'm sorry, turn on the Ultrabook and see what happens. I don't exactly know what's ultra about this, but if they mean that it's an ultra pain in the ass to work on, then yeah, they're right. 2 screws left. And if you're wondering why there's a Scotch tape here, it's because there's a little bezel issue where a couple of the clips were missing, and I glued it back together before because it's really an unnecessary cosmetic piece, and the tape's just there to hold it overnight until the glue is completely cured. So, okay, Flip it over. I'm done putting it back together. And now we are going to move the camera so we can turn it on and see what happens. Okay, it's open. Cross your fingers, ladies and gentlemen. See what happens. And there you have it. Screen's on, works fine. I don't see any white pressure marks on this one, which is good, but then again, you don't really see them until it's on a bright background. So we're gonna go into this and we're gonna open a notepad file. That's, you know, just a blank notepad file. That'll make the whole screen bright white, and see what happens. Here. And that's the tricky thing with pressure marks, because if you look at this right now, let's see. Okay, apparently it wants to use the Joker as a wallpaper today. That's nice. Didn't tell it to do that, but whatever. Since the screen has like a busy image on it, you really don't see it, especially if it's dark. If there's a pressure mark, you're not going to see it, especially on like a black, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but on a black background, you're not going to see anything. It's not until the screen gets bright and then it's glaring. A pressure mark would be an area of the screen where it looks like it's super bright compared to the rest of the screen. And unless I'm missing something, I don't think, oh, I do see one right there. But to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not even going to have this fight with these eBay people anymore, because the last one looked like it had fireworks all over it, so I'll deal with just one of them. I don't know if I can even capture this, because it really is faint, but if you can see, it's right there. It's that spot. Well, actually, there's another one right there. Don't even know if you can see it, but there. Zoom in right there. This is just a reflection over here. Right there, that spot that's super bright compared to the rest of it, that's what a pressure mark looks like. That is not fixable, but I'm not going to bother this time. So, having said that, that's the end of this part of the video. Right, and there you have it. Believe it or not, it's actually less involved on a laptop than it is on an Ultrabook, only because things are not as smashed together as they are on an Ultrabook, so there's a lot more room to work around. These little Ultrabooks have become skinny to the point where they're just obnoxious, honestly. If you connect it back together and you don't have, and you know you bought a good screen, you know that, you know, it's brand new, whatever, and you don't have an image, I would try reseating the video cable. It's just like a ribbon cable. It can, you know, not be just right. Look back at any of the ribbon cables, make sure that everything's connected to what it has to be connected to, blah, blah, blah. Like I said before, especially with this model and these Ultrabooks, if you don't have Wi-Fi all of a sudden, or you have only 2 gigahertz when you had 2 and 5, double check the Wi-Fi wires. Other than that, there's really not much else to say. Put it back together, it works. It's got 2 tiny little pressure marks, which frankly, if you knew the headache that I've been through with this thing, I'm living with it. I don't care. I'm just gonna put everything on dark mode and pretend it doesn't exist. You know, like I said in the previous video, we'll pretend it's Windows Vista and it doesn't exist. So, alright, thanks for watching.